Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Welcome to another episode of Office Hours, and the professor is in. Before we get to our question today, I would just like to wish everyone an absolutely marvelous Ramadan. Today was the 20th day of Ramadan where we are, so it's the night of the 21st, and we are filming this at night after having broken our fast some time back. And the question which we're dealing with today is a controversial one, in the sense that it will give rise to controversy. Otherwise, it may not be controversial for some people, it may be controversial for others, and that's why it will lead to controversy. So the question is, did Muawiyah, namely Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, consume alcohol? Now, this is accepted widely as a fact among one group of Muslims, namely the Shia Muslims. And of course, this is something which I'm almost certain the vast majority of Sunni Muslims will think is absolutely preposterous, hence controversy. So what are the facts, if any? Can we even get to the bottom of this? I think we can, and I will present to you the sources on this matter, and I will not refer at any time to any Shia sources whatsoever. I'm going to present only what is there in the Sunni Hadith literature. So let's jump right in. Well, the locus classicus, or the real origin of this whole idea, the classical location, so to speak, in the sources, is the Musnad of someone known as Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Among the Sunnis, he's called Al-Imam. He's given the title of Imam by Sunni Muslims. So this is the Musnad. This is a very large collection of hadith. I do not know of any translation of this work into English. I really don't know if it's translated into any other language either. But it's certainly not available in English. So people in the Sunni community who have access to translations of varying quality, most of them rather mediocre in my opinion, of works such as Bukhari and Muslim, the two most famous, you do not have that situation when it comes to the Musnad of Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Ahmad ibn Hanbal is also considered to be one of the eponymous founders, that is to say, a founder of a school, so to speak, of fiqh or Islamic law that takes his name, namely that is to say the Hanbali school. Ahmad ibn Hanbal died in the year 241 of the Hijrah. That's should be 855 of the Common Era. Ahmad ibn Hanbal is regarded as an extremely important scholar of Hadith. Now, because this is not available in English, the vast majority of people who are going to be watching this are not familiar with this source, and they don't really understand that it's organized on a very different principle. Many people who know Arabic also have never bothered to pick up the book and read it. So the Musnad work is organized according to companions. And so it's not organized like Bukhari, which is a so-called musannaf work from, the verb sannafa yusannifu, to classify, which are arranged. Bukhari, Muslim, and the others are arranged more or less or approximately according to the abwab of fiqh. That is to say, the topics which you find typically in Islamic law, more or less. So the edition which I have here of the Musnad of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, this is the 5th volume of 6 from the Cairo edition of, if I'm not mistaken, 1313 of the Hijrah, so that's more than 100 years old. I don't have an original. This is a reprint from Beirut by Dar Sadr and Al-Maktab al-Islami. So it's a reprint of that, and just to give you an idea, you can just let's open it up at random here. Not very easy to read. You really strain your eyes. There's no punctuation. There's no chapter headings. The hadith in question is in volume 5 of this Cairo 1313 edition on page 347, and it begins 1, 2, 3, the third line from the top, and goes down to 4, 5, 6, should be, the 7th line down from the top. Now this, as I said, has no punctuation. It has no tashkil. But just in case you want to see, it's right here. You can close up. I've put a post-it note here. And you can see that that's where it is. So not only is this edition hard to use, it's not easy to find. There are other editions of the Musnad. There's a famous, huge edition by, I think, edited by Shu'aib al-Arnaout. There's even a bigger one before. There's even another large one, I think, before that. I don't have any of those, but I do have a very good edition. And that's the one I'm going to read this report out of. In case you're wondering, they do match word for word. This is the one published by Jam'iyyat al-Maknaz al-Islami, the Thesaurus Islamicus Foundation. This was published in 2007. The Thesaurus Islamicus Foundation in Liechtenstein is a beautiful leather-bound, fancy schmancy edition, and should be about 12 volumes. This is volume 10. This is volume 10. So in volume 10 of this edition of the Musnad, page 5,436, and the hadiths in this one are numbered. It's hadith number 23,407. 23407. I'll just hold this up again just to show you, and then we can read from it. It's on this side. It's at the bottom. I think I've underlined something there. Okay. So hadith 23407. It says, Haddathana Abdullah, Haddathani Abi. Who is Abdullah? It's saying, Abdullah relates to us. That's Abdullah who says, my father related to me. That's Abdullah, the son of Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Haddathana Zayd ibn al-Hubab. This is where we get into the actual isnad. So then Zayd ibn Hubab is the next guy in the isnad. Haddathani Hussein. Then some guy named Hussein. Haddathana Abdullah ibn Buraidah. So Abdullah ibn Buraidah related to him. Now Abdullah ibn Buraidah is an important fellow. He's the son of the Sahabi named Buraidah. But he's narrating it. Although this hadith is in the Musnad of Buraidah al-Aslami, as he is known. So it says, Haddathana Abdullah ibn Buraidah qala. So Abdullah ibn Buraidah said, Dakhaltu ana wa abi ala Muawiyata. My father and I, we visited Muawiyah. فَأَجْلَسَنَا عَلَى الْفُرُشِ. And he bade us to sit down upon something which was spread out. Furush could be carpets, could be cloth, it could be, basically they're not sitting on the bare floor. He puts down some sort of a floor covering, maybe it's a carpet or whatever. So they're not sitting on the bare floor, they're sitting on a furnished floor, so to speak. ثُمَّ أُتِينَا بِالطَّعَامِ. Food was brought to us. فَأَكَلْنَا. And we ate it. ثُمَّ أُتِينَا بِالشَّرَابِ. Then sharab, or drink, was brought to us. فَشَرِبَ مُعَاوِيَةُ. And Muawiyah drank. ثُمَّ نَاوَلَ أَبِي. Then he offered some to my father. ثُمَّ قَالَ. In other words, then he, the father, said, مَا شَرِبْتُهُ مُنْذُ حَرَّمَهُ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ وَسَلَّمَ. Al is omitted here. Now this is very interesting. There's more, and I will read the rest of it, but I want to stop here. So you could say, oh, well, sharab in Arabic simply means mutlaq al-mashrub, mutlaq al-mashrub, anything which can be drank. Water, juice, you name it. Could even be an alcoholic or intoxicating beverage. So how do you know that it wasn't, milk, for example? Well, because Buraidah al-Aslami says that I have not drank it since it was declared to be haram by the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we know it's a haram beverage. Then it goes on. I'm going to continue from where we left off. ثُمَّ قَالَ مُعَاوِيَةُ. Then Muawiyah said, and the next part is exceedingly strange. كُنْتُ أَجْمَلَ الشَّبَابِ قُرَيْشٍ وَأَجْوَدُهُ ثَغْرًا. So he says, I was the most beautiful young man of the tribal confederation of the Quraysh, and I had the most beautiful teeth. Could mean front teeth, but teeth. وَمَا شَيْءٌ كُنْتُ أَجِدُ لَهُ لَذَّةً. And there was nothing I found more delicious. كَمَا كُنْتُ أَجِدُهُ وَأَنَا شَابٌ as I used to find when I was a young man, غير اللبن, other than milk. أو إنسان حسن الحديث يحدثني. So laban, can be milk. It can also be a kind of, nowadays, kind of a yogurtish drink, but basically a dairy-based drink. In Iran, they call it dugh, maybe. In Turkey, I believe it's called ayran, but it could also just be milk, or it could be a kind of curdled milk, So that's what he says. Or a person who, a person of good conversation. So that is kind of weird. It doesn't really fit with the whole thing. There he's offering alcohol. It's very clear. The guy says, I've never drank alcohol since the Prophet ﷺ declared it haram. And then he goes on and on about how handsome he was and he had a beautiful set of teeth and blah, blah, blah. So that's the hadith in the Musnad of Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Now, what I find very interesting is that this hadith is quoted in other texts as well. Among these texts where it is quoted is the Musannaf of Ibn Abi Shayba. We have already met Ibn Abi Shayba in my Lady of Heaven series. Ibn Abi Shayba died in the year 235. And since I've made that video, I've come across a number of other editions of the Musannaf of Ibn Abi Shayba. It is a huge multi-volume work. But I have a number of editions here, and we'll just look at them quickly. So we have the edition published by Muhammad Awama, and this is published by Shirkatu Dar al-Qibla and jointly with Muassasat Ulum al-Quran, and it's published 1427 of the Hijrah, or 2006. And in this edition, it's hadith number 31201, 31,201. So in all of these editions, there's no variation, but I'll just show it here. If you want to have a look at it, here it is. I highlighted the wrong one first above it, so I crossed it out in red, but you can see it here. Okay. So I just want to read how it is here, and it's the same in the other versions. But it's interesting. It says here, it's got the same isnad. Of course, there's no Abdullah and Abihi, because that's Abdullah ibn Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So it goes straight away to Zayd ibn al-Hubab an Hussein. That's again, here it actually says Hussein ibn Waqid. قال حدثنا عبد الله بن بريدة قال دخلت أنا وأبي على معاوية فأجلس أبي على السرير. So here it's slightly different. So it says that my father and I went to visit Muawiyah, and he had to sit on a sarir, a kind of bed. وأتي بالطعام فطعمنا, and food was brought and we ate. وأتي بالشراب فشرب. So it says fasharib, it's in the singular, it means Muawiyah drank. And then after that, that whole phrase about it being haram and him offering it, to Buraidah, and then Buraidah saying that he's not going to drink it because it's haram and he's never drank it, that's all missing. And then it says فقال معاوية ما شيء كنت أستلذه وأنا شاب فأخذه اليوم إلا اللبن فإني أخذه كما كنت أخذه قبل اليوم والحديث حسن. So it's the same business about how here it's not talking about how handsome he was. He's just saying that, the most tasty thing that he liked to drink when he was a young man, or the thing which he found most tasty, was leban, as he is finding it today. And it says here that the hadith is a sound hadith, is a good hadith, hadithun hasan. Actually it says al-hadith al-hasan. And I really should say al-hadithu al-hasanu, but here it's voweled with two fathas. I don't know what's happening there. But that's how it is in the Muhammad Awama edition. We've also got it here, and Muhammad Awama edition, it's volume 16, page 79, again, hadith 31201. Then we have an edition edited by Hamad ibn Abdullah al-Jum'a and Muhammad Ibrahim al-Lahidan, I think, al-Luhaid, I'm not sure how that's pronounced. Volume 10, this is published by Maktabat al-Rushd, 1425 of the Hijrah. And it matches what I just read as well. And there's no interesting footnotes there, so we'll put these two aside. Then we have an edition, edited by Nasr ibn Abdul Aziz Abu Habib al-Shithri, or al-Shathri, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, along with Sa'ad ibn Nasr ibn Abdul Aziz Abu Habib al-Shithri. This is volume 16, Dar Kunuz Ishbiliya, 1436. So again, we have the same thing here. And again, the key phrase about Muawiyah offering this beverage to Buraidah al-Aslami, and then him saying that I've never drank this since the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam declared it to be haram, is missing from here as well. And here it also says it's Hadith Hasan. And so if you go down to the footnote, there's a footnote at the bottom. Footnote number 5, Hadith number 32586, page 109, footnote 5. It says Hasan. So it's confirming that the hadith is a hadithun Hasan, a good hadith. That's the one just below Sahih. Then it says Husaynun Saduqun. So I assume that that is referring to Husayn ibn Waqid al-Marwazi, that he is Saduq, that he's an extremely truthful narrator of hadith. And then it says here, Akhrajahu Ahmad. In other words, that Ahmad ibn Hanbal included it in the Musnad. And then it tells us that Ibn Asakir also included the hadith. So Ibn Asakir, that's Tarikh Madinat Dimashq, is a huge book. In fact, he says volume 27, page 127. I don't know which edition, etc. Maybe it's given in the bibliography. We don't have that information here. And it doesn't concern us. So the final edition of the Musannaf, which we're going to refer to, is the one by Abu Muhammad Usama ibn Ibrahim Muhammad. This is An-Nashr, the publishers Al-Faruq Al-Hadith Al-Taba'a Wal-Nashr, published 1429. This is volume 10. This is the edition I think we used when we did our Lady of Heaven video. Yeah. And so this is volume 10, page 151, hadith number 31183. You notice that the numbers are different in each version. So these guys have obviously used different manuscripts, and some obviously must have more hadiths than others. I don't know. I haven't made an extensive study of the Musannaf of Abi Shayba, but suffice it to say that there are different editions that have used different manuscript corpora to prepare their critical editions. This is an easier one to read because it's got the full voweling. So let's just read it one last time. حدثنا زيد بن الحبابي عن حسين بن واقد قال حدثنا عبد الله بن بريدة قال دخلت أنا وأبي على معاوية. So up to here it's the same. More or less is what's in the Musnad of Ahmad. So every time it's Abdullah, the son of Buraidah al-Aslami, saying that they go to visit Muawiyah, and then he bids them welcome. He has them sit down, whether they sit on a bed or whether they sit on some sort of floor coverings is immaterial. Food is brought, and then sharab, or some sort of drink is brought. Wa'ata, here it has ata, bisharabin, fashariba, and Muawiyah drank. So drink was brought, or drinks were brought, something to drink was brought. Muawiyah drank. فَقَالَ مُعَاوِيَةٌ مَا شَيْءٌ كُنْتُ أَسْتَلِذُّهُ وَأَنَا شَابٌ. So again, that whole business about the most delicious or tasty thing which he found when he was a youth is the same as it is today, which is Lebanon, which gives the impression that they're drinking Lebanon. But that's not the case if you see what's in the Musnad of Ahmad. So obviously there is an attempt to cover up what is happening. And so that portion has been deleted. Buraidah's objection saying that this is haram, and this nonsense about him being the most beautiful guy, the most handsome fellow of Quraysh, and he had beautiful teeth and he used to love to drink milk as he's doing now, is the obvious addition. And so here in the footnote, there is a footnote here, and it's an interesting footnote. So let's, it's footnote number 1. I've highlighted it here. I don't know if you can focus on that. I'll try and hold it here for a second. It's kind of blowing around, but shaking. But anyway. So what does it say there? It says, Fi isnadi Abdullah bin Buraidah. In the isnad of this hadith, in the chain of narrators, you have Abdullah bin Buraidah. In other words, Abdullah, the son of Buraidah, and Buraidah al-Aslami is a companion, and according to the Sunni Aqidah, the Sunni doctrine, a companion is adul. All the companions are adul. They have a collective sort of irreproachability, so whatever he reports is beyond reproach. He cannot be impeached or impugned. And then it says, Qala Ahmad. So Ahmad, that's Ahmad ibn Hanbal, said, Alladhi rawa anhu Husayn. In other words, that which is narrated via Abdullah ibn Buraidah through Husayn ibn Waqid, ma ankaraha. He says it is how rejectable, I suppose is one way we could say it is. So he's saying that the hadith is munkar, or the person is munkar. We had a whole discussion about what munkar al-hadith means in our Lady of Heaven series. But if that's Ahmad ibn Hanbal, then why did he include it here? So something funny is going on. Finally, we find it quoted also in Majma'uz Zawaid. Majma' al-Zawaid is a huge book as well. This is the Hussein Salim Asad al-Darani edition, Darul Minhaj, 1436-2015. Al-Mujallad al-Hadi Ashar, this is volume 11. This is by Nuruddin al-Haythami, very important Shafi scholar who died in 807 of the Hijrah. So here, he also quotes it on page 99. So volume 11, page 99, hadith number 8092. عن عبد الله بن بريدة. So there he goes straight away to the Rawi Abdullah bin Buraidah. قال دخلت مع أبي على معاوية فجلسنا على الفراش. Okay, so my father and I, we went to visit Muawiyah, and he had to sit again on firash, on stuff that was spread out. ثم أتينا بالطعام فأكلنا, then food was brought and we ate. ثم أتينا بالشراب فشرب معاوية. Then drinks were brought, and Muawiyah drank. ثم ناول أبي. Then now this is interesting. Then he offered it to my father. Then what the father says is cut off, and it says ثم قال معاوية كنت أجمل شباب قريش وأجوده ثغرا. I was the most handsome of the young men of Quraysh and had the most beautiful teeth. وما من شيء أجد له لذة كما كنت أجد وأنا شاب غير لبن وإنسان حسن الحديث يحدثني. Again, he says the most delicious thing which he found when he was a young man, among delicious things, was leban and a person of good conversation. Okay, so again, that key phrase is dropped out. But it does say that it was offered to him, to Burayd al-Aslami. Then there's something very interesting here. I have highlighted. It says رواه أحمد. رواه أحمد ورجاله رجال الصحيح. And he says Ahmad ibn Hanbal has narrated this hadith. So it's there, as we already showed, in the Musnad of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, but it's different there. And it's rijal, in other words, the people, the narrators in the chain of narrators are the rijal of the Sahih, of Bukhari and Muslim. Oh my God. وَفِي كَلَامِ مُعَاوِيَةَ شَيْءٌ تَرَكْتُهُ. This is absolutely crucial. I'm going to circle it. And there, Al-Haythami says, and in the speech or statement of Muawiyah was something which I have left out. He admits it.
Fascinating.
Ya Rajul, why did you leave it out? Man, what are you doing? Why did you drop it out? Very interesting.
Fascinating.
The editor, Hussein Salim Asad al-Darani, has provided us with a footnote. Footnote number 2. Let us just try and show you that. Footnote number 2. Righto. What does he say? All right, he says, Fil Musnad, volume 5, 347. So in other words, he's giving you the citation. He's telling you the Musnad, he's using this edition, volume 5, page 347. And yes, he's got it right. It is page 347. All right, but does he tell us anything else? Oh my, he certainly does. He says, Min tariqi Zayd ibn al-Hubab. Because here, he says that this thing is narrated, this hadith is narrated via Zayd ibn al-Hubab. Because here the full isnad is not given. Majma' Zawad, he drops the asanid. Then he says that the next person in it is Hussein in the chain. Of course, as I said before, that's Hussein ibn Waqidin al-Marwazi. And then it's Abdullah bin Buraidah. And then he says, قال دخلت ... because he's just quoting that, and he says وَهَذَا إِسْنَادٌ رِجَالُهُ ثِقَاتٌ. This is the opinion of Hussein Salim Asad al-Darani, the editor. In other words, he's saying that this is a chain of narrators whose narrators are thiqat, who are reliable. Then he says غَيْرَ أَنَّ زِيَادَاتِ حَدِيثِهِ وَصَفَهَا غير أن زيادات حديثه وصفها الإمام أحمد بقوله. However, there are ziyadat in this person's hadith. Now, is he referring to Abdullah? Is he referring to Hussein? وصفها الإمام أحمد بقوله. And Ahmad ibn Hanbal said, that sometimes stuff was added to these hadiths. He says, في أحاديثه زيادة. He says, in his hadiths, there is sometimes a ziyada, something which is added. ما أدري أي شيء هي. And he says, and I don't know what that thing is. وَنَفَضَ يَدَهُ. And then he flicked his hand. So he's talking, the stuff has been on, I don't know what it is. And he flicks his hand. وَذَلِكَ. And then the editor goes on, مِثْلَ الزِّيَادَةَ الَّتِي تَرَكَهَا الْهَيْثَمِ. So now he is alleging, he is asserting that this ziyada, this addition, this thing which was added is what Al-Haythami has dropped off. Okay, and then he tells you what was dropped off, and he says, "Ma sharibtuhu mundu harramahu Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." But the weird thing is that he's saying that Ahmad says that things have been added, and then he's quoting Ahmad because Ahmad himself quoted it, and then he says that this is the part that was added. "Ma sharibtuhu mundu harramahu Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." I never drank it since the Prophet made it haram, and then he says, "Wa hadhihi ziyadatun munkara jiddan." Wa hadhihi ziyadatun munkaratun jiddan. He says, and this is a most detestable addition to the hadith. My. Very, very strange. If you actually look at the whole context of the hadith, the part that doesn't fit, and we have to remember that the original form is in Ahmad ibn Hanbal, all of these guys are quoting Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So Ahmad ibn Hanbal has the part where it's alcohol. And then they're saying, no, the part that's been added is when the guy claims it's alcohol. And all of that blather about him being the most beautiful, the handsome chap in the whole tribe of Quraysh.
'Cause I'm handsome, I'm so good looking, I'm easy on the eyes, don't you know that I'm handsome?
And how he just loves to drink milk.
Oh, God, it's so good. So good. So good and tasty.
That is the obvious thing which has been added. I think that there is absolutely no question that this hadith has been manipulated in the Musannaf, and all of these 4, I think, editions which I quoted, 3 or 4, how many were there? 1, 2, 3, 4, yes, 4 editions of the Musannaf all match in that omission. And the same is there in Majma' al-Zawaid. It shows that, once again, these people have something to hide. They want to preserve this notion of a supposed adalatul sahaba, that is to say, a collective irreproachability of the totality of the so-called companions with a capital C of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whereas, if you know anything about Islamic historical primary sources, hadith, tarikh, seerah, etc., you will find them full of information like this, which paints a picture of the Sahaba quite different from that of the fictional remembered past of the vast majority of Sunni Muslims. So I would conclude by saying that if anything has been added to that hadith, it's that whole bit about Muawiyah claiming to be the most handsome young man in Quraysh, and that he loves to drink milk and sit and have conversations with nice people, with congenial people, or enjoy these sort of convivial gatherings in which the most innocuous beverages were consumed, such as Lebanon. This is simply doesn't go and doesn't fit with the whole overall context of the hadith as it is there in the Musnad of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and that is the addition and the thing which has been added. This is corroborated by other things. This is out of the scope of this video. If you're interested, go in the comments and ask me, I'll make another video on that. But there's also evidence, again, of the same sort, that Muawiyah, in fact, engaged in the liquor trade during the time of Uthman ibn Affan. So I could make a separate video on that as well. And given the overall hatred that Muawiyah had, especially for the Ahl al-Bayt, for Imam Ali alayhi salam, for these people who are the most beloved of people to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, such an act is completely in character for Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. So I conclude that the report in the Musnad of Ahmad is accurate. It does indicate that Muawiyah consumed alcohol. Thank you.